most of you are working with a clay called Purge Red. That comes from a manufacturer in Asheville. And Purge means their machine where they mix up all their different clays from all over the region. When they're cleaning out their machine, you have Purge Red. So this is kind of the clay hot dog. You might think of it as a sausage, but it sure looks like a hot dog. Do the math here. It's the only thing that's going to make you more frustrated than doing the math again is starting over when you have to take all the clay off and build your armature again, because now it's all sopping wet with all the clay water. Your clay's got a bunch of paper in it, and it's going to make it harder to work with. So do the math. You'll have to trust me that it's going to matter. And when I pull on here, it's going to create a little bit of big league chew. I don't know if you ever had that stuff. I know I had it when I was growing up as they were trying to market tobacco to us children. It's important to keep the tool clean. You can clean this with an old toothbrush. You probably need a new one anyway. If you don't need a new toothbrush, just borrow a family member's, and then they'll probably figure out that they need a new one. So I'm going to find the place on my chin, which I can't even see right now that my beard's grown in 3 weeks. The volume of your hair, which I don't have any, but I have the volume of my hat. It's really useful to have the beat up image so you can have it right next to what you're doing. If you don't have it there, you should question, are you really observing from your images, or are you just moving planes around the way you think they should be instead of observing them? Now, a couple days have passed and I've got a little white beard growing on there, and I'm pretty sure that's some mold that came out of my newspaper. I like to keep one spray bottle that has a little bit of bleach in it, so it's not very much, a little more than a capful. And I'll spray that down, and my little white beard's going to disappear real quick. The beard was getting in my way. While I'm down here looking up my nose, I'm going to try to work on some of the other problems that I see there too. And what I want to avoid is trying to look at my bust and make it symmetrical, because most of us don't have very symmetrical faces anyway. And this gets into another thing that's a little bit unexpected, that outside of our Cupid's bow, this plane kind of goes inside your nose. It barely changes directions there. And some of us have it more pronounced. Some of us have a nostril that has a plane that's more flat right at that point. Some of us have even more of a straight plane that goes right up your nose. So your lips sometimes go up your nose, and that's okay. Right now, we need to start with a generous mass of clay. It looks quite a bit bigger than what I think I need, which is useful because this is mass, and I'm trying to describe volume, but because I'm using a massive material, it's all going to be mass. It's a subtle thing to understand, but volume would be what something occupies, and mass is what it weighs, what it actually feels like. Hair is uniquely thin. If I were to go up to Jordan's ponytail and try to flip it, it would not be massive. It would have volume, but it wouldn't be massive. I'm trying to replicate that with something massive, something really dense. It's just ancient particles that decayed off of an old stone somewhere. And I'm going to turn that into hair. To have this 3-pound mass of clay be the volume of her hair doesn't make any sense at all, except that we're working in clay. What I see in the back image here is that there's a point, this constriction, where that hairband pulls all that volume into a mass. So I'm going to start by trying to replicate that. My hands are dry and clean, and the clay is softer than Gouda, maybe about like Gouda, way firmer than cream cheese. You don't want to work with cream cheese for this. So it's coming to a point. Now I will undercut that. I have this kind of clove of garlic here. You thought Izzy had it bad with the up-the-nose shots. Well, now Jordan's got like a clove of garlic for a ponytail. So I'm feeling a little bit better. I've taken Jordan's hair from a clove of garlic into an acorn squash. That seems preferable comparatively. It's important to remember that water makes things wet. Smooth is a texture that you get by polishing. So I can polish with my fingers, I can polish with a smooth tool. A smooth tool is a fast way to get to smooth. Given that I'm still as thick as a big potato, I'm going to shove my finger in there so I can move it from the inside. If we were drawing, we would draw a line here, and we would put down a value. We would do some shading, as we'd say. We'd put down a dark value where that shadow is. But because we're essentially doing the opposite of drawing, we're taking those values and translating them into planes. I've got this kind of crummy butter knife that might have come from the cafeteria here on campus. I can't confirm or deny. Turn this softball size lump of clay into several planes. It looks more like some kind of plant than hair, right? So when I put it up here and compare it to the rest of the planes that I've been shaping, now it has context. And remember that context is going to be a big part of how we perceive. That right now, out of context, if I put a picture of this on Instagram, I would lose followers who would say, like, what the hell have you done? My fingers are trained really well at gauging a thickness when I can't see that thickness. I can feel it. That's from making thousands of pieces of pottery over 20 years, right? Your hands are not going to be as skilled. I know I started off with something the size of a big potato or maybe a softball, and I've hollowed out a golf ball. If I'm using this pin tool, I have to make sure that I'm not only making marks. One of the things I like to do to illustrate this is challenge a student to count the number of marks. So if you can accurately count the number of marks that I've made in there, I will give you an A on this project. And the point of that challenge is that it would be impossible. I'm not making marks in there. I'm creating surface area that has a sticky medium in it. When you bring this back to the studio and that falls off and I see 40 marks in there or 12 marks in there or 4 marks in there, that's because you weren't paying attention. And this kind of attachment takes time, all right? I'm probably going to edit this video down so it looks like I've done it in maybe 2 minutes, but I'm at minute 7 now. This sort of attachment should take about 10 minutes. And if you don't think you have time for it, consider how much time you're going to have to spend when it falls off. You make this part again because it falls on the floor, and you start over, right? So things like this, you take the time to do correctly the first time. So after a week of working on Jordan's hair, back to my OG here. Lower lip especially is set up by some musculature that kind of holds it up. Everybody has different lips. That's one of the reasons that we enjoy looking at them so much. Not only because noise comes out of our mouths, but because they're different, they're unique to us. But when we look at our images, we'll see that this plane doesn't change direction, especially the way that I've got mine pretending not to smile. So this convex plane goes all the way to the inside of my mouth. And I've got to try to get that to happen to set up the volume that the lips need. That's what gives them volume. If it didn't have all this here, they'd just be hanging off my face. Sitting at a red light. It's a little soft to be able to shape that plane very deliberately. But while it is soft and I've just made that connection, I'm going to give myself a COVID test. I'm going to go up in there to a point where I can't see anymore. A damp sponge should do it. If I go spraying down that whole eyeball, then all of these planes are going to collect water like I'm crying. And I don't want to do that in front of y'all. I'm using one of the modeling knives. I'm not using the pin tool. The pin tool looks the most like a pencil, and I see a lot of kind of naive marks in clay with the pin tool. I think because people want to use it like a pencil, and then they scratch a line on clay like they would drag a piece of graphite across paper. And then you just pull up a bunch of boogers and make kind of a scratchy little mark. The next thing I'm going to do is remove some clay. If you touch your eyeball through your eyelid and move your eyes around, you'll see that your lens inside your eye pushes your iris forward. And all of you are going to have irises that are darker than the whites of your eyes. So we need to make a medium that is all one color, which is hot dog brown, into some variation. We have to make a change of the value. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to cast a shadow, and I'm going to do that by carving away my iris. I've given myself a pretty difficult pose with kind of a frown smile. Like I'm trying to hold that in, right? So that's not an easy thing to get, which I guess you're welcome. Well, I guess I got to get some ears on there. Shh, he can't hear you. I have 2 balls of clay that are essentially congruent, and I'm going to grab them by both ears simultaneously and try to get this attached. And there, now we're done. I have Shrek ears. It looks pretty good. My ear's a little strange in that it was injured from wrestling. So I have what they call cauliflower ear. It's kind of a badge of honor for some wrestlers. Our moms really didn't want us to have it. They were afraid that it would socially make us outcast or something. But, you know, if you've ever met a wrestler, they're kind of happy with that too. And something else I can do now is establish an ear canal, which is just like my COVID test. All right, on to Shrek 2. That said, you might have a nice enough photograph that would show you where some wrinkles are. If I did have that in my photographs, I could be pulling this tool and just give it a little bounce in some of these spots. And that could start to give the appearance that the tissue underneath is pushing up and out. I have a few little boogers in my ear, in my nose. I do want to clean those up. We talked about abstraction only being allowed in your tool marks. So that could be maybe at most like Rodin, right? R-O-D-I-N, Rodin. He took quite a bit of liberty in letting the material carry some significance. For the purposes of what we're doing here, we wanted to learn how planes form lines, how volume relates to mass, how we represent both of those. So it's a really great way to learn some skills on observation, which I know you've all made huge strides there. It's also a good way to exercise vocabulary, and it's not really a great means of expression, which is a little unfortunate, but it is just intro to sculpture, right? You're just learning to see things differently